So my name's Garrett, and I am the person hosting this event. Really, our host is Subversive. So thank you all for hosting our event this evening. We've got a great panel here tonight. We're going to be talking about how to lead during times of recession uncertainty. We've got Pilar Schenk from Cisco. We've got Alex Eagle from Freebird's Roll Burrito. We've got David Rugaju here from Dell. We're going to talk about the different perspectives as things that people might be thinking about as we're leading our teams and the challenges we might be facing as leaders for those teams and what we can do to best put ourselves in the best position to thrive and succeed. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Experis and Movate, and Freebird's Roll Burrito. Experis, they're doing some incredible work helping place some great people in some amazing IT roles. Movate is working with some incredible big companies to help augment and support their support services. So if you got over 100 support agents, Movate can really help with that. And Freebird's Roll Burrito, if you're looking to cater your next event, I mean, what a better advertisement than that right now. The food's delicious. And then of course I want to give a shout out to our host, Subversive. What a great venue. They do some incredible VR work. They've done cool commercials to music videos to a variety of other training situations and scenarios for companies and organizations. If you're looking to do some cool VR type of stuff to engage your team, check out the Subversive team. They're doing some great work. And then finally, I want to introduce myself. My name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. Essentially at Ambition in Motion, oh, thank you, Phil. Our vision is a world where the vast majority of people are excited to go to work. When they're there, their expectations meet reality. When they come home, they feel fulfilled. I know that may sound cheesy. I know that may sound corny, but I really do believe that we can get there by improving our abilities as leaders, because people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. And so if we as leaders can be the best leaders we can for our people, we can create environments and cultures where our people feel like they can thrive, where they can feel safe, where they can feel like they can do their best work. And so we host these events to bring people together to talk about topics relevant to leadership and to improve our own ability to lead our teams. So anyways, let's dive into the topic. So, topic for today is how to lead during times of recession uncertainty. We've got Pilar here, Alex, and David. I'm going to kick off with an initial question, and that is, during times of recession uncertainty, our employees might feel concerned about their personal investments, purchasing power, and most relevant to us as leaders, their livelihoods and ability to continue the work that they are doing at our company. How does observing other companies making layoffs impact your employees?
Are we double mic'd?
We are all mic'd, yeah.
Okay, do I need this one too though? Sorry.
You know.
Okay, I'm good. I've got it. Look, I think it's hard, right? It is a distraction for people to have that on their minds. And I think when people start to have fear, they lose some of the love and joy that they might have in their job and in their day-to-day. And they might have they lose their creativity. And even worse, they lose the willingness to take risks, right? To take a risk out there and do something because they're like, oh my gosh, if I make a mistake, what if I'm like the next on the layoff list? I think that uncertainty, and we've certainly gone through a lot of uncertainty as of late, you need to exhibit different leadership skills. First, for me, I really think it's important that you're just authentic. You can't always say exactly what's going on, but I think you have to own it. You have to tell your teams what's happening. You have to have a conversation about it. You have to connect with people, which I think is the second. So connecting with individuals, seeing how they're feeling, seeing what's on their mind. And third, provide a little bit of inspiration, right? How are we going to get through it? What are we going to do together? It is hard. So I definitely think be authentic. Definitely connect with the teams, and then figure out what is the goals at the end of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for the teams.
That's great. Alex, what do you think about that?
Well, honestly, I haven't heard much chatter around our office, and it's got me wondering, because I'm old enough that I have been through some hard times in the past, and I remember a lot more fear and a lot more chatter. And I'd like to think it's because we do have a better culture than the companies I was working with at that time. But I think there's also some generational differences at play, meaning I think that people are have more options in terms of ability to make money, and therefore feel less threatened by job insecurity. So I think the gig economy is transforming how people feel about job security. I think mobility and remote work is transforming how people feel about job security. And I also think that younger people tend to feel less attached to their career as their identity, and so are just less fearful of losing their job. So that financial insecurity component, that psychological component, I'm curious to know more and learn more about younger generations and how they're impacted by these kind of macro conditions from what I'm experienced in the past.
Ooh, I'm going to ask a follow-on question because I think there's something you brought on, Alex, that I thought was really interesting, which was the notion of our identity being associated with our work. And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is there a healthy amount of identity with our work? Is there an unhealthy amount of identity with our work? I bring this up. My wife and I just got back from our honeymoon in Vietnam and Thailand. We met a lot of people from Europe. And when we told people how long we were there for, we were like, oh, we're there for 2 weeks. And we thought we were so proud that we would be on vacation for 2 weeks. And they were like, 2 weeks? Why so short? And I was like, what do you mean, why so short? They'd be like, oh, we're here for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I'm like, are you on sabbatical? They're like, no, just part of our normal PTO policy. And as I talked to them more, I found that they did not identify with their companies at all, but they faced just as much burnout as I feel like Americans did. So that's the caveat and the preface to my question is there a healthy or an unhealthy amount of identity we have with our company that can allow us to optimally thrive at work?
Well, I don't know that I'm a good one to answer that because I've always had a very unhealthy relationship with my career. I think, somebody once asked me, what are people going to write in your obituary? And I'm like, I'd be all about my work. But if your work can be about people and helping people in their career, then at least hopefully that's the upside. So I don't have great balance, but when you love what you do, there isn't such a thing as great balance. That idea of work-life balance for me is a myth. If you love what you do, then it doesn't matter how much you're working, and that's how I live.
That makes sense. And David, how about you? Both questions I'd love to know the answer to. So the first was, how does observing other companies making layoffs impact your employees, one? And then two, what are your thoughts on identity with work and how we should be viewing that?
So the obvious thing is that the impact is negative, right? It's everywhere, so there's always going to be some sort of negative impact. I think the most important part is to recognize that what I've done in the past is say, hey, first of all, the worries you have are the same as the ones I have. I'm worried as well because there is always that basic instinct to survive, right? And so meeting at that point and saying, hey, it's okay for you to feel this way, but here are the things, here are the facts on the ground. And so what I've done is, okay, not divulge too much, because sometimes you can't really divulge everything, but you can say, for example, you're this important because you are assigned to this number of projects that are long-term projects and not going anywhere. So obviously, you're not going anywhere. Just do your work as usual. The company has a plan to manage what's happening right now, and you'll be fine, right? Obviously, in real life, that's a little bit more difficult, easier said than done, but that's the first thing. I think also being vulnerable with your employees is important. Because as a boss or as an executive or as somebody in leadership, some people will think, hey, you have this facade that you have to put on that, hey, I'm well put together. But everyone has their days, right? And so just saying, hey, sometimes things might go haywire, and I understand, and everything is going to be fine. Communicating effectively and often is also another factor that's helped me in the past. Those touch points. So let's say, if there is a cadence for meeting a certain amount of times a week or a month or whatever, increase those so that they know that, hey, my boss or my manager really cares about my well-being. You have to be able to exude and show that they're valuable people and employees to you. That's not just a number on the spreadsheet, they're actual people. And once you make that connection, you have that trust, then I think that helps. So that's what I would say.
That's really interesting. And I love that you bring up the vulnerability element of it, because I think there's some real difficult decisions that unfortunately some businesses are going to have to make. Like obviously, Pilar, you brought up this notion of safety and can we be safe at work? And Alex, you mentioned that, I don't really hear much about this topic of recession at my company. And perhaps your businesses are doing really, really well right now, but there could be some businesses right now that are struggling. And perhaps there needs to be some vulnerable conversations. Because I think oftentimes as employees, if we're in a business that might be impacted by the recession, the unknown of what we create in our mind is far worse oftentimes than the actual reality of what the worst case situation is. But if our leader won't be upfront with us about what that worst case scenario is, we can make up the unfathomable amount of pain or suffering in our own world because we can't even imagine what that, challenge could be. So Alex, Pilar, David, what are your thoughts on the topic of vulnerability as a leader?
I think it's core, right? It's core and authenticity. I think people choose to work for leaders, and as you kicked off, people often leave because of their leaders. And if you don't have trust, teams are nothing without trust. So uncertain times are tricky, right? You may know things that you can't share. But I do think, to your point, uncertain times do not have to equal bad times, right? And so putting to the mat, what's the worst case scenario is a really good one. Awesome. If they are not worried or they're in the gig economy, I can find something else to do, I am thrilled because that takes away the fear element. So I love the idea of really saying, okay, well, it doesn't have to be necessarily a bad time. Let's talk about it. Let's go through it. So if you're uncertain, what's the probability? This company laid off 10% of people, that means 90% of people are still employed. So what do we need to do to take that off the table? I always try to think about what are the things accepting the things that I can control. We can't control that. I like what you said, I might be worried too. So own it, have that vulnerability, and then go through and reframe it. So uncertain times also means an opportunity, right? It's opportunity for people. It's opportunity to reposition and go on the offensive. And sometimes we look at that moment and it's oh my gosh, it's really, really scary, but actually maybe I could invest and go take share or go do something different. And so I think it's really important to have that conversation with your teams and really explore what's on their mind and then take it to the mat, explore the worst case scenario and then say come together and figure out what's the positive that could come out of it. Because I don't think uncertain times always needs to equal bad times.
I guess what I would say, in addition to what's already been said about vulnerability is I think that covers the personal side as well as the professional side. So vulnerability means not just telling the truth about what's going on at work, it means telling the truth about what's going on at home as well. And so, saying, I didn't bring my A game today because whatever happened at home or I'm dealing with this, because we're all just, it's a way to hopefully build the type of relationships that you want to have with the people that you work with, where they also will share as openly with you, and then you are empowered to help them be more satisfied, at least in the work side of how they spend their time.
Yeah, and what I would add is, so once you've done that, right, it offers an opportunity, right? The first thing is you can now offer your employees flexibility, right? It's uncertain right now. What do I need to do? Do you need time? Because what a lot of us didn't take, use COVID as an example. What a lot of us did not realize was the mental toll it took on everybody, from children to parents to grandparents, right? And so understanding the human side of that and being okay, this has had an effect. You can't, like he said, you can't bring your A game right now. Do you need time off, right? Do you need to work at night, for example? I had people in my group that preferred, listen, during the day, I just had a child, COVID's just hit, I don't know what to do. I said, listen, your delivery doesn't change, you're a high performer, do your work at night. Can you do it at night? Sure. Hey, no problem. So you offer that flexibility. I mean, you have to adapt to the times that we're in. I think that once you've opened up that door, then it allows you to be a little bit more creative as somebody managing actual humans.
So you're bringing up a really interesting point, David, and this is that notion that, and this may seem obvious, but this notion that as a leader, we need to put in the extra time to go the extra mile for our people and team. And that might mean that we are a little bit more uncomfortable to make their lives more uncomfortable, or make their lives more comfortable. But it does beg the question, and it leads right into the question I've got on my list, is how do you anticipate that? How do you protect the psychological safety of your team when they may possess a fear of getting fired? How do you, essentially when I say psychological safety, all I mean is how do you ensure that people don't feel afraid to experiment? How do they ensure that they don't feel afraid to try something different at work and not walk on eggshells because they fear that if they try something new and it doesn't work out, that they could be getting the axe?
Well, I think the key piece of that is connection, right? Because for everyone, that may show up very differently. For some people, they may be like, cool, I'll go work in the gig economy, I'm good. For other people, they may need flexibility. For other people, they just might need to know it's okay to be nervous. So I just really think connection's so important. I know during the pandemic, when we were like all sent home, and to your point on like mental toll for so many, I would just try to reach out to people, and you had to reach out in different ways because you weren't going to the water cooler, you weren't seeing people. So I used to do like a lot of walking one-on-ones. I used to call people randomly when we didn't have a business meeting, like, hey, what's up? How are you? How are you feeling? What's going on at home? What can I do to help? And I think you've got to make time to really connect. And those things are so, so important when you feel that uncertainty. And you might, as you go through a busy day or going through a busy meeting or whatever it might be, you might not have that conversation and you miss something that's super important.
I would say, do everything you can to take elements of surprise off the table. I think that's what creates psychological insecurity. Is an environment that has surprises, layoffs, without any conversation or awareness that might be coming, and so there's a fear of it. And so part of creating that sense of security and lack of surprise is making a ton of investment in continuous conversations, so people just know where they stand as far as how they're performing in their role. And you take that off the table. So at least they know, hey, if there's a macro condition going on here, I'm considered a high performer, or I know exactly where I stand throughout the year and not one time a year in an annual conversation. And then also surprise as much as you can afford to have policies. Like, we really don't ever walk anybody out the door at Freebirds. We have a practice of tenure-based severance if there is problems, and it takes a while to get to that even usually. So take surprise off the table would be my focus.
Well, in my opinion, if you're a leader worth their salt, you're already doing those things to consistently connect, right? So I mentioned reminding them how important they are to the organization, right? So whether it's going to have to be situational, because each and every employee in your group is going to be different. Some, words, the love language or whatever, some people like certain kind of things, right? So for example, in my group, some of the things I did was, some were conversations, others were actual actions of saying, hey, look at the amount of work you've done, look at the amount of work that's coming, look at the demand, look at the pipeline. Some people needed it mathematically. So I would go and open up the planning and say, this is what we have and you're okay. But I also think you have to be a model of good behavior. So I mentioned mental health. So what you need to do is, as you're telling people to take that time off, you need to take that time off as well. Because if you're not taking it off as an employee, I'm going to be kind of paranoid. Like, okay, he's telling me to go off, but he's still here. So what's going on, right? So I think you have to model that by example. And I think that's, if you combine a bunch of what they've said with what I'm saying, it's a good enough formula to for success in a downturn.
Oh, I love that, David. And I'm going to skip a question because it leads into a question that I've got later on here. But it leads me to think of the question I have is, what is a popularly held belief about leadership that you disagree with? One that I personally am not a fan of is the notion of unlimited PTO. I don't like it. I know this sounds, and the reason why I'm saying this is it's unpopular. It's unpopular for a reason. I don't like it because if you work for a leader that doesn't take any PTO, you're not going to take any PTO yourself. The whole notion of unlimited PTO doesn't make me feel safe to take PTO if I've got team members and leaders that are not taking it themselves. Nothing feels worse than getting fired on the beach in the Bahamas. So that's an unpopular belief that I hold, but I'd be curious to know from you all, what is a popularly held belief about leadership that you disagree with?
Yeah, I think on the same vein. I think as leaders, we think like we need to be the hardest workers and we need to always be there. But we are not modeling, to your point, David, to the team, that it is important to take care of yourself. And my sense is I have to take care of myself first so that I can be great to my team. And I think during uncertain times, both at home and at work, there's a lot going on. Sometimes we come last, and then I don't think we show up to our teams in the way that they need. So I'm a big believer in taking time off. Don't actually send any emails when you're off, right? So like, oh, I'm gonna take time off, but then I'm gonna send you like 400 emails when I'm off. So what are you saying to your team that you need to work on your vacation? It is hilarious what you said about Europeans and other cultures, because I work at a company, or the last couple of companies I worked at, it's like, oh, August, Europe's off in August. I'm like, awesome. Like, when is the US off? Like, what month can we all say that we're off? Because I don't think we have a month. But it's just commonly, oh, well, don't expect to get anything done in August. But I also think in your time off, you could also create a culture, and something that I was thinking about today when we were doing some conversations around talent and like having fun and how we become a talent magnet, is really thinking about celebrating time off, right? So like you take time off, but then, do you post a picture like to your team, like this is what I'm doing, and like I'm having fun and I'm not working, and it is okay for you to do the same. So I am a big fan. I often tell my teams, like, take time. Like, we have Cisco has a shutdown. It's the most awesome thing in the world for a week at Christmas. Take that time. I don't want to hear from you. Be grateful, because the best you is the you that comes back feeling refreshed and feeling amazing and having done whatever you want to do.
Cool, I like it. Alex, what's a popularly held belief about leadership that you disagree with?
Can I give you two?
Oh, you can.
A list.
I just thought of a second one. My absolute favorite is that as a leader, you're supposed to have all the right answers. That's, can I swear here, or we on live TV? Or, I mean, that's the ultimate BS. A leader has all the right questions, not all the right answers. So that's my absolute favorite. And then my second favorite is that as a leader, you don't make mistakes that cost the company a lot of money. And that is also BS. And so we have a practice that every year leadership team goes around the room and talks about our mistakes. I need to do it way more frequently than once a year, because we make mistakes all year long. So I need to pick up the pace on that. But we talk about our mistakes and what the impacts were, and what we learned.
I like it. Those are great ones, Alex. I particularly like the one about, as leaders, we can definitely make mistakes. I think the other, even on top of that, is as leaders, when it comes to those mistakes can be even interpersonal. It can be, we could have a direct reporter or a team member of ours meet with us, and that is the most important meeting of their month when they're meeting with us, or their week, or whatever. For us, this is one of maybe 15 meetings we got on the docket for that day. Not to say it's not important, it's very important, but there might be something that we say that we might have totally forgotten about, or we didn't write down, or we didn't jot down, and we made an honest human mistake when we forgot to follow up about it. But that other person might be really frustrated if we didn't, and that can potentially tarnish a relationship and create opportunities to try to re-engage or reflect on that.
Yeah, so what I would say is, mine is this whole notion of leaders are born and not made, right? And I find it so ridiculous, because if you look at what makes a good leader, a whole bunch of things like accountability, great communication, the humility to learn, for me, is the biggest one, because as you climb up there, some people, depending on their personalities, the air up there is thinner, so maybe, it changes the way you think. But I think that if you are humble enough to know that you always learn, even from everyone that reports to you, it's a consistent thing, you're going to be a more effective leader, right? And so I think leaders are made. Most people who are leaders did not know they were going to be leaders at that point in time, right? Look at Mark Zuckerberg, look at Bill Gates. I mean, guys started all these tech companies in their garages, right? They have no idea. It's throwing something at the wall and making sure it sticks, right? And then they learn the actual leadership as they go. He didn't have HR in his garage, right? He didn't have finance. He didn't have any of that. And so, being self-aware is also a huge thing. You have to be able to understand that, one, there's always smarter people in the room that know more than you do. So surrounding yourself with those kind of people is the most important thing. And then the ability to actually learn from them and apply what you have learned actually lends credence to what you're doing as a leader.
So David, if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is the Lion King mentality of Simba saying, I can't wait to be king, is not probably the most accurate way to prepare for being a leader?
I don't know if I'm the right person to ask that question, because actually I might be, because yes, let's compare two different countries like the UK and the US. They have a monarchy, right? Sure. Then you look at the US and it's a different system. And I think that free kind of mentality that we have here is a little bit, it opens up doors to more people than if you have a very closed kind of system. So I 100% agree with you that's not a great notion to have. I can't wait to be king is more of an inherited kinship than anything else. You can still be a king in your own, castle, depending on the size. So.
I like it. Cool. I figured I'd bring up the Disney or Pixar. So whether it be in the early days of COVID in 2020, the Great Recession of 2008, or the dot-com bubble of 2000, can you share an example of a positive/productive leader that you witnessed? So please share who it was, what was the situation, how they impacted you.
I think during the pandemic, I was learning a lot about myself as a leader and what my team needed, and just that I think I needed to exhibit different skills, right? And as I said, authentic, connection, and inspiration. And I learned all three of those things from someone who reported to me. So I saw someone on my team, and he was just all over it from the very beginning. And people were going through things that I didn't see. I was running, getting stuff done, stuff that I'm good at, and he was seeing all the things that I wasn't seeing. And it was a little bit of a step back for me to say, he's doing those connections. So he was the one that was doing all the calls. He was the one that was having the virtual happy hours. I think in times of uncertainty and fear and stress, a little bit of humor goes a long way. So his, form of humor was some drinks and some happy hours as a team, virtual happy hours, because you weren't actually getting together in person. So you had to do what you had to do. They were themes. They were silly. I think humor can be really, really a fantastic thing. So I learned something from someone I worked for. I've adopted it because apparently we're at it again in terms of uncertain times. And I think that it was super inspirational to me and changed how I'm going to lead going forward.
And so that leads me to ask you a follow-up question. How have you empowered him to take on more additional leadership roles or grow within the organization to continue to flourish?
Well, he and I no longer work together because we're at different companies, so that's not possible. But he is doing great. He's an executive now and well deserved, and has a very loyal team that works for him. And I think it's because of all the things he does. And again, as you kicked off, great talent has choices. They have really great, they have choices of who they work for, and I think they work for him because he cares.
That's cool, I like it. Alex, how about you?
It's definitely the ability to make your team laugh and to be lighthearted in those dark moments is a real skill. Unfortunately, not all of us possess it, myself included. So I was jealous to witness our Vice President of Operations, Nick, get out. And I'm going to say, you asked about 2008 or COVID and those moments, but in the restaurant industry, we've been dealing with COVID for, a long time. And it's the safety challenges, then it's the supply chain and the labor challenges, and it just goes on and on and on. And it's as intense as it was years ago at this point. And there is also a sense of fatigue that starts to set into the team. And I think Nick sensed that recently. So he got out for Halloween in a crazy Halloween costume and went around visiting restaurants in this crazy Halloween costume and just making our tribe members, our employees, laugh and have a good time.
Yeah, in my case, mic check. Okay. In my case, I was CEO at the time, so I worked in transportation technology.
What year was this?
COVID.
Oh, COVID. Okay, got it.
And when COVID came, everyone thought the world was ending. I personally thought the world was ending. I was digging a tunnel in my backyard. Seriously, I was like scared. But it's because the neighbors had bunkers. Anyway, during COVID, what happened was, on the human side of things, our CEO at the time set up COVID PTO. Separate from your normal PTO, your sick leave, it was 2 weeks that you had to recover away from the pressures of work. And I thought it was a really humane thing to do because, one, it's an uncertain time, but two, what happens if I fall sick and I have no PTO? Am I not going to get paid? And so I know you hate unlimited PTO, but in that particular case, it was 2 weeks and then some, and it helped a whole bunch of people in our group. So I think for me that's a standout. That was you have to meet people where they are, and I think he did a good job in that.
But even in that example, it was 2 weeks of paid PTO, and the example was set.
It was 2 weeks and then some. So some people had lingering effects, and they were still allowed to take the requisite time off to recover.
We were talking about this last night. I have my team in town, and we were talking about some of the things that companies did. Cisco sponsors a quarterly day for me. So it's a day like where the company shut down. And it's such a beautiful thing, because if you take a day off on Friday, everyone else is working, you come back, you pay for that, people still call you, you end up taking meetings. I think the whole idea that everybody else isn't working is fantastic because it gives you permission. And then it's titled a day for me. Like, it's not a day like, just a PTO, it's a day for you to take care of you. So I really love that, because I still hear, and I think mental health, everything you read, everything when you talk to people, it's still very hard for folks. And so day for me is such a great idea. I do have a question though. What was the Halloween costume? Sorry,
yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to ask questions, but I want to know.
It was a Statue of Liberty that says, "I burritoed."
This way, say that one more time. It said what?
I burritoed because it was right before the elections there.
That's hilarious. That's so funny. So, what are you doing right now to instill confidence and maintain engagement with your employees? What do you do to, it sounds like all of your companies are in a pretty good situation, but I'd be curious to know, what are you doing right now to instill confidence in your employees? What would you suggest companies that are maybe struggling right now do to instill confidence in their employees? We don't have to start with Pilar. We can start with David. We could go.
Well, I think some of it has already been touched, right? Constant connection. So if increasing the cadence of those connections that you have with your employees is really important, in my opinion. We also did virtual happy hours. But in this case, COVID is gone. So even those who are remote, people come into town, and we make it a point to meet. And so that confidence is, it spans the gamut, right? So also ensuring that you have to consistently remind, even those who, you have high performers and low performers, everybody is contributing at some point, right? Unfortunately, you have to make decisions. But just reminding them that, hey, your work here is important. The company is nowhere without its people. I think that goes a long way. Having been everyone's been in the trenches before, you know how important that was to you when you were coming up. So it's very important not to forget that as you climb, or whether you get to the zenith of your career, whatever the case may be, always remember that there are people that need to climb as well. And so for me, that's what I always do. And I'm not just saying that for the sake of saying it. I'm saying it because I think it's really critical. Because you never really know what somebody's dealing with in their day-to-day life. So having that that wherewithal and that self-awareness to say, hey, don't start a meeting without really finding out, hey, how you doing? How's your family? What's going on? How are the kids? I used to find that strange because, I come from a different, when I came here, I come from a different background where you have to greet people first. So originally, people were like, hi, and that's it. And that's the end of the conversation. And I'm thinking, there's more to the person, right? Like what's going on? And so I think that connection, that builds that trust. And if your people trust you, that confidence is just going to be a given. You don't have to do anything to build it. It's going to be there inherently. So,
It's interesting. I don't mean to bring my honeymoon back up again, but when I met with people from Germany, it's a similar concept. When I would say like, hey, how's it going? Like they'd be like, as if this was a deep, intentional, how are you? Like as if I was asking for them to take a reflection and introspection moment on their life at that juncture in time to give me an update as to how they were feeling. And I think that's a positive way to have conversations because oftentimes, I'm guilty of it where I'll say, how are you doing? And it's just more of a casual, oh, I'm good. How are you doing? Good. But I do think that deep, how are you? Give me an update on your life is really powerful.
Yeah, and I would advise that my methodology is that don't ask me if you don't mean it. Because if you ask me how am I'm going to tell you exactly how I'm doing. So just say hi and keep it there, or ask me and let's have a conversation.
I love it. That's awesome. Alex, how about you?
One of the big lessons for me was when COVID hit, we launched many safety initiatives, but one of them was improved communication around health and safety, and we had an all-hands call with our restaurants and with the folks that support our restaurants, and we would cover all the details of COVID, and I came to realize, why the hell wasn't I talking about safety before COVID? And so I would say, if you have no choice, if you hit a crisis moment, of course you should communicate, but how about thinking about communicating and building an architecture for communicating well in advance so that when crisis hits, it feels more controlled. And it feels like you're just talking about how you're addressing things instead of the scariness of introducing this new feature of communication to the organization. So that's definitely one. And if I remember the question correctly too, I think you want to repeat it?
Yeah, I can absolutely repeat it. So what are you doing right now to instill confidence and maintain engagement with your employees?
Oh, well, the two other things that come to mind is like, no matter how bad things are, there's always good stuff going on. And so a part of that architecture is always talking about the good stuff. Like, I don't know, it's never gotten so bad for me that there isn't good stuff to talk about, including dispelling like ridiculous ideas like hiring freezes or pay freezes. Like, people should still get recognized and promoted even when times are not good. Anniversaries and birthdays still happen when recessions hit. Like, there's always good stuff to talk about. And so if that's part of the architecture of your continuous communication, then I think you can always remind people that there's a lot of good going on in your organization.
Okay, so just to be clear, this is a very fascinating idea, this notion that we can promote people even when times aren't good, or if they're doing fantastic work, but unfortunately the economics of the business or the things that are going on don't necessitate an actual promotion to be given. How do you go about communicating that? How do you go about giving a promotion or giving the feeling of a promotion without actually maybe giving the title or the raise or whatever would come with that? How do you do that?
Well, we are fortunate to be small enough that we can individually recognize promotions on company calls, and no matter how bad economic conditions get, I would continue the practice of promoting with title and compensation even through difficult times. I don't know what CFO came up with the idea that you stop all that stuff when times are bad, but it wouldn't work for me. I just think that is ridiculous because you need people more than ever in hard times, and there are people who step up in huge ways in those moments that need to be recognized.
Cool. How about you, Pilar? So just to reiterate the question, what are you doing right now to instill confidence and maintain engagement with your employees?
I'm adding to the list of manager principles that I disagree with, that we freeze promotions, because I totally agree. Like, there are always people doing amazing things, and when times are bad, I think that recognition and that positivity are that much more important, to your point. And it's often when we pull back and we're like, oh, well, all hiring, all promotions, everything's on hold, right? And it's like, well, no, actually, there's still probably people doing even more amazing things. I think from a confidence perspective, it is all about trusting the team. So I think there's great power, and I say this often with my team. One of my favorite sentences or phrases is "together is power." Have the conversation with the team. Get it out in the open. Sometimes when you all know, like, oh, I'm feeling the same way, or I'm worried, and as we talked about, or I'm anxious, or this is hard at home, or someone's, my friend got laid off and I'm really worried. I happen to be at a company. We've announced that we're going to do some layoffs. People are on high alert, right? Like, that's happening. So what do you do? Today I was asked a very pointed question, like, hey, appreciate you on the meeting. Like, you didn't address, how many people are getting laid off? What's the percentage? And it's like, So how do you answer that question? Because I'm not able to exactly answer that question, but I want to show up as authentic. I want to have trust, and I want them to know that I care. So I said, hey, look, yes, it's happening. I can't share at this point exactly what the percentage is, or how many people, or which teams are impacted. But if you're feeling nervous, I encourage you to build a pipeline of other options for you. And I'm here to help. And if you want to talk about it, come see me, because there's a lot of other people feeling anxious as well. But I just hit it head on. I think in terms of building confidence, I like what you said in terms of some of the recognition and knowing the hard work and great work that the teams are doing. Talk about the future. Uncertain times don't need to be bad times. I truly believe it. So what are we going to do when we come out of it? What are we going to do over the 6 months? What are we going to do over the 9 months that's going to change the game? Because I think there are things that we can all do, and we need to find some positivity and look at what is ahead at the end of that rainbow.
Ooh, but you bring up this interesting point, Pilar, that I want to ask a follow-up to. It's this notion that you mentioned that some people may approach you with their concerns about being laid off, and you say, hey, let's talk about it. Let's identify some additional opportunities. I'm assuming you mean potential opportunities outside of Cisco. Let's say you identify some opportunities. Maybe they start the interview process or the application process for that, and then you determine they don't need to be laid off, and they're great, and you want to keep them. How do you handle something like that? It seems like that would be a very difficult and awkward situation, because that whole identity of how we feel with the company has now been totally tarnished, because now we've already started mentally preparing and emotionally preparing ourselves for transitioning out of the organization. Now we're saying, actually, hey, we're not laying you off. We want to keep you. I would imagine that's a fine line to walk. How do you walk that line?
Well, it's super tricky. But for me, the number one thing is for people to know that I care and that they can trust me. And I think what is best for them is going to be best for us. So if we lose some great talent because that anxiety for them is so big, or maybe they have something going on at home that they need that paycheck and it's a really, really big deal, and they're not in the gig economy, or they don't see then I want them to feel covered. And if I can help them feel covered, and they leave Cisco, or they leave my team and go somewhere else in Cisco because we're a big company, that's great. Whatever is good for them is good for us. But it is a hard conversation, and it's a really delicate balance. But you don't have a lot of great choices there. You could say, hey, oh no, everything's going to be fine, or it's not our team, but that's a really, that's not authentic, and that may not be true. So I stick with let's be honest, what's going on for you, and what's good for you is going to be good for me.
God, isn't that funny, that notion? I chuckle at it now. It's really messed up, but so easy to, and so often to do that we have this faux empathy around other people's challenges. And they're like, oh man, that sucks, that other team got laid off. And we're secretly thinking thank goodness it wasn't my team. It's easy to be, I guess grateful for our own privilege in a scenario where, somebody else is getting laid off, but it's hard to empathize with their scenarios and situations. All right, last question before we jump into Q&A. And this is on the flip side of identifying the positive things of the recession, but when companies do a poor job of handling recession uncertainty with their employees, what tends to happen? Are there warning signs that leaders in our audience should look out for as an indicator that their company isn't handling these concerns properly?
Yeah, there are. Most companies have internal employee surveys. That's most of the time you'll see a negative trend, right? You'll see a negative impact there. External job boards like Blind and all that stuff, you begin to see messages immediately. So that's a good indicator. And then you'll practically see attrition in some cases. People will just say, you know what, I found something better. You guys are not dealing with the situation in a manner I thought you would. I'm out, right? And so those are the things that I've seen in my experience where you're like, okay, the company didn't handle the situation perfectly. I was in a situation where I saw a company, I had a friend that worked for a company, and they did not honor the commitments they had made towards bonuses. So they said, hey, you're going to stay all year, and then next year on a particular date, we'll pay you out. Didn't communicate the changes to the bonus plan, didn't pay those who got bonuses on time, and still expected people to stay, right? So I think it also goes to your style of leadership that you have to honor your word. And if you're not planning to and something changes, you have to communicate effectively and often, because during times of uncertainty, that's like a recipe for people to bail out. So yeah, that's what I would say about that.
I love that. That's a really good example, David. Alex, how about you?
Well, there's been quite a bit, I think, of talk around quiet quitting and, people who basically checked out of their job and maybe you don't know it. And the lookout for me, right now would be office chatter. So if there's office chatter going on, that's definitely a time to be concerned if you've got that going on right now.
But how do you ensure that your position as CEO of Freebirds doesn't cloud your perception of what your people are actually going through? Because, your people are going to, whether that be through conditioning or, whatever, as we're raised to respect those that are in power, and your people aren't going to tell you all the bad things going on in the world, right?
It is incredibly challenging to earn people's trust enough to detach from the title thing. And I don't have perfect advice for that, but the best advice I can give over many years of trying to break down that wall, it is that if you have relationships throughout all levels of the organization, so you're not in some situation where you're only surrounded with other C-level people as the only people that you have relationships with. And so I have, reporting relationships as well as personal relationships with people at all different levels of our organization.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, I like it. Trust the team. Connect with people of all levels. I have one-on-ones with really junior people that work for me in India. I have people like outside of our organization I talk to. I talk to a lot of people and I collect all of that information, and it tells me a lot of what's going on with the team.
That's sweet. But under the question of when companies do a poor job of handling recession uncertainty with their employees, what tends to happen, and what are some warning signs that you tend to see?
I think this quiet quitting, probably people always quit, but I definitely think that is something you see more often. We do employee surveys as well. We do something called an engagement pulse, and we do them on a frequent basis so you can see trends. I do think that is helpful, although not everybody punches in there like, I'm quiet quitting, I'm sure is not always coming up in the survey. And then I think you just keep your ear to the ground. I know folks outside, there was some, the layoff was announced at our company, and someone who knew me was like, hey, I just got this resume. Does this person work for you? Or in your team? Talk to people, your external network, your internal network, you'll hear it and you'll see it. And then hey, there's something going on, this person's worried and we're not doing enough to talk to them about what's happening and talk to them about their options.
That sounds really awkward. How do you handle a scenario like that? You're like, hey, so saw this resume come through from a colleague of mine. What's going on? How do you handle a scenario like that? It sounds awkward. I've seen leaders handle it really bad, where they'll just straight up fire the person because they saw that they were applying for a role outside of their entity of the organization. I've also seen leaders totally ignore it and not address it at all. What's a good way of handling a scenario like that?
That conversation went something like this. First, it's never a bad thing to leave. Like, if you want to go, let's talk about why and what I can do to help you, because I want you to go into something you love. But I want to understand more about what you're thinking. I heard about this, and it turned out the person was just nervous, which is understandable. So let's talk about your nerves. Let's talk about the options. Let's talk about your future. Let's talk about the good things that could be here. You can't. The hard thing is you can't guarantee someone who's in that situation. So it's like they have to choose what's right for them. But I think, again, I like to encourage people, like, if you want to leave, I want to help you get to where you want to go.
Cool. No, I like it. That's a really selfless growth mindset element from a leader. Very cool. All right, I'd love to open up for some Q&A. What questions do you have for our panel, y'all?
So on the, layoff situation, if you, and then conversely the promotion situation, if you're if the company is in a situation where they are potentially having to do layoffs, but then also they then turn around and promote somebody, how do you handle that narrative? Because I've seen it happen in companies that I've worked for. So how do you handle that narrative?
Great question. So to reiterate the question, how do you handle, from a good leadership perspective, a scenario where we're both at the same time laying off people and promoting people as well?
That's a tough one. But I do think there's a choice, and the choice that I would make would be to continue to promote, even if I had to reduce headcount. And that would be my last resort, to reduce headcount, so I'd seek to avoid that. But that's how I would make a prioritization.
I do agree to an extent. I think they're not, you have to look at them, they're not the same case, right? So each case is different. If a layoff is because of a reduction in force or anything like that, then I personally err on the side of how many more people can I keep, because that's the important part for me. But I can also understand why you would want to promote those that stay. So it's not it's a very difficult choice to make, in my opinion.
I don't know. I think the other scenario that often comes with that is we are laying off people, promoting people, and we are also hiring at the same time. So I don't know if you've had that one, but I think that is a common thing. I think in those situations, the layoffs are often about like structural changes, and so it's about the role and not about the person. And then I think in terms of the promotions as well as the hiring, I've been in a company where, like, when we were like shutting down or like laying off people, we shut down everything. No snacks, no coffee. I think we joked about this yesterday, but I think this is a year, and I won't name the company, we took away trash cans, like, because we were trying to save money. And like, okay, but like, we don't want to make the people that are here, like, we laid off all your friends and your job just got bigger, and we're not going to pay you anymore, and we took your snacks and your trash cans. Like, for the people that are left, they need to know that we're going to support and care for them, and that we're going to try to make their jobs as awesome as possible. So it's a tough balance.
Silicon Valley. Front row full of questions. So since layoffs, Freebirds, you may be not having to do this, but I'm assuming that Dell will have to as well. What is the ideal respectful, and I don't mean that, like, maybe not, right? We'll cross our fingers for you, but what is the ideal respectful notification process in your mind?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. What is the ideal notification process? I feel like on LinkedIn, it's super easy to criticize the way a bunch of other companies are laying off their people, but it doesn't seem like there's a clear-cut path towards doing it the right way. So what is the best way to lay people off?
A couple thoughts. First, do unto others as you want unto yourself. Actually, on LinkedIn, there's a lot of really good things because people really mess this up. Like the whole send someone an email, like contact people while they're on vacation. I think there's a lot of ways to make it awful. Cisco does a really good job of treating people just as well on their way in as on their way out, which I think is great. But I think it's all about respect. I think back in the day when when I had to do my first layoff, HR actually did it. Like they called you into a room, you were with someone you didn't really know. It was very, very cold. Today, when I have to do a layoff or when I've had to do layoffs, I've had to do it myself, which is not much fun, I hate. But I would rather, if I think I was getting laid off, hear it from like my leader who I'm close to, who probably or hopefully cares about me and my future and can have an honest conversation with me rather than something super impersonal by a stranger or getting a card. Or there was a day where it was like the 2 rooms, like go into blue room, you're gone, red room, you're here. That's probably not a caring, and the world is, I believe the world is really small now. Like we are all very connected, and that is remembered. That's not a company I'm ever going to work for again. I wasn't in the blue room that day, but that's not where I want to be. So I think treat people as much as they're going out as you would like to be treated as well is a good mantra.
Who here has seen the movie Office Space? Early 1990s movie. This makes me think of the scene where the consultants come in and they're just like, so we noticed this guy has been working here for 4 years, but we laid him off 4 years ago. So we just corrected the check issue and checks won't be sent to his house anymore. And we'll just let it all figure itself out. We won't actually tell him anything. So I'm thinking the worst way to lay somebody off. But yeah, Alex, David, do you have any thoughts on way to lay somebody off?
I agree with her. I've never laid off anybody that in an impersonal way. I have to see you face to face, explain why. Usually, even before it gets to that point, making sure that you find a position for the person within the company if that's available. That's always the first option. Unless it's obviously for cause or for some other reason, right? Then that's different. I've seen situations where people get on a Zoom call. You're all fired by, that's definitely not the way to do it, right? So I think you have to add a personal touch to a horrible situation like that. So that's what I would say.
Cool. Alex, any other thoughts or suggestions on there?
So did everybody go into the red or blue room at the same time? Like, how did that work?
Yeah. You got a card and you went into the 2 rooms, and one room was like, hey, sorry, you're all fired, and come pick up your packet. And the other room was like, hey, congratulations, you still have a job.
So that, as awful as that is, y'all, I've had it one step worse than that, which is to not do it all at one time. And so all day long for several days, people are getting called in one at a time and then having to leave and get their stuff. And that is the absolute worst thing I've ever experienced in my life.
I have one slightly better. They called the police and lined up a bunch of patrol cars in front of the building and started just walking people out.
Wow.
So people left on a Friday, everything was good, came back on a Monday, and we called it Black Monday. They laid off, I'd say, about 60% of the folks in that building. So, yeah.
Yikes. Talking about psychological safety there, huh? Yeah. What other questions you got? Yeah, Bradley, I got you.
I feel like we're talking a ton about how to take care of our teams and employees, and then we talk a little bit about bringing in home stuff because it humanizes us. What about the other way around? We take on so much responsibility as leaders, and then how do we kind of leave it at work to some degree and show up at home for our kids or partners or whoever it is?
Great question about balance. And yeah, I mean, it's so easy to get, as Alex mentioned, get caught up in the work and not allow us to be our best at our home life. I don't know, what do y'all do to make sure that you're just as on at home as you are at work?
Well, so I'm guilty of that too. I have the same affliction he has. I tend to be married to my work. But that changed when I had my 2 kids. I realized that there was just no way it was sustainable. If you recall, I mentioned modeling healthy habits, right? It's impossible for you to be good for the people that work for you if you are not good yourself, right? Same thing with your kids. You can just transpose it in whatever area of your life, and it's the same exact thing. So it's a great point because you have to model those same behaviors that you expect. So I think that's going to be critical as well.
I mean, whatever is going on at work is what you're going to bring home. Whatever is going on at home is what you're going to bring to work. So as long as you like what you do at work, even though you may not have as much quality time for family or for yourself, then this notion of a balance isn't as relevant. So that's how.
I love what I do. I love working, so maybe we were the wrong panel to answer that question. But I have 3 kids, and I am also an introvert. So, all day long I'm talking and all those things. So when I get to the end of the day, I'm like a wilted flower or weed or whatever it might be, to get the right analogy. And it is really hard. Because my kids are excited to see me. My husband's an extrovert, he works from home, and so he's excited to connect. And I have to work really, really hard at it. And so I think it is a struggle. I try to definitely block time. So block time for myself so that I can actually take a break sometime during the day so that I can show up at night with my family. I definitely block time because I have a global team where I can end up on calls in the evening, so I can spend like the quality time to try to connect. And then I am a master of like anything that I can automate or process or grocery delivery or like all the things that I can take off my plate to allow me to connect a little bit more, I do. But even with that, it's a constant like reflection. Am I doing it right? Am I wrong? Like, what do I need to do? Because it's really, really hard. And I think the more you love your work or the better you are at your job or whatever it might be, it just pulls you. It pulls you and pulls you and pulls you, and I'm happy to like take that pull. But I also love my family, and so it's a juggle.
But it just goes back to your point before about modeling the behaviors you want to see. It's like if you are giving your all at work and giving nothing at home, what are you communicating to your team of people?
Yeah.
Cool. Everybody, this was a great panel. We've got another 45 minutes for drinks, food, beverages, more Q&A with our panelists individually, and just networking in general. This has been amazing. Thank you for your engagement in this Q&A in this panel. And yeah, stick around. I'm going to follow up with everybody after the event. I'd love to chat with everybody individually to learn your feedback about this, how you enjoyed it, what you thought could be better. But really appreciate you all being here. And yeah, I look forward to y'all enjoying yourselves and having some more fun tonight. Thanks for being here.